Welcome, gentlemen, to day 2 of anatomy. I hope you enjoyed day 1 and I hope you got your assignments completed. Today we're going to move on to joint action. So a joint is any movable kind of part of the body where two bones intersect. Joints are held together with ligaments. So ligaments attach bone to bone. We'll talk later on about when we're talking about muscles. We'll talk about tendons, and tendons attach muscles to bone. So that's kind of a key thing that we'll talk about later on. Also, when we get into talking about a little bit of sports injury, we'll find, and talking about the knee joint, things like that, we'll spend a little bit more time talking about ligaments specifically. Okay, so I want to talk about the joint actions. It's the 3rd page, I believe, in your pamphlet. It should have small squares of people moving and little definitions next to it. All right. So first two we're going to talk about is flexion and extension. They're probably two of the biggest ones you've heard of. But flexion refers to the movement that decreases the angle between two body parts. Flexion at the elbow is decreasing the angle between the humerus and the ulna. When the knee flexes, the ankle moves closer to the buttocks, and the angle between the femur and the tibia gets smaller. So you see in the diagram there where flexion of the knee means the heel is coming up towards the butt, and flexion of the arm or elbow, it means that the lower arm is becoming closer to the upper arm. Extension is the exact opposite. So refers to the movement that increases the angle between two body parts. Extension at the elbow is increasing the angle between the ulna and the humerus. Extension at the knee straightens the lower limb. So if you're in a gym, there's an exercise called leg extensions or knee extensions, where you're basically seated in a machine, or sometimes you can be lying down, but most of the time seated, and you're actually straightening your leg with a cushion that's attached to the lever that moves the weight. So you start from a bent leg position and move to a straight leg position. And hamstring curls would be the exact opposite. So you're working the other way, and you see that would be flexion. Okay. Abduction and adduction. So they're basically talking about taking an appendage or something like that away from the midline of the body, or moving towards it. So that's what it's using as its landmark. So in a gym, there are two machines that you'll often see in the leg section. It works their inner and outer thigh, and they're called abductors and adductor machines. Okay, so abduction is to move away from the midline of the body, just like abducting someone is to take them away. For example, abduction of the shoulder raises the arms out to the side. So abduction would mean you would start with the arm beside you and move it away. And abduction of the leg, exactly the same. You start with the legs close and you move them away. Okay, so you often see people working that in the gym. Not a great exercise if you ever spend time in the gym doing it. It's a great stabilizer, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. So adduction is the opposite, movement towards the midline of the body. So like your hips, your legs would be squeezing together. Okay. There's a little blurb there about fingers and toes. You don't hear about abduction or adduction much more than just with arms and legs, but there are some other variations of it. So rotation and circumduction. Sometimes I say this when we're doing our arm circles when we're warming up, because often we call them arm rotations, but it's actually arm circumduction, where you put your arm into a cone. So our arm circles that we'll do, you'll do them wide, you'll do them narrow. That's actually, the movement is called circumduction. And arm rotation, if you held your arm straight out and just twisted it around its own axis, that is what rotation is. Okay, so it's often something that's mixed up. You don't do a lot of rotation specifically as a movement, but you'll do them within movements. Arm circumduction, you'll do them as a bit of a warm-up often, or if you're a swimmer, you'll do some specific swimming type drills. But for the most part, it's a movement that's done in coordination with many others. Hyperextension and hyperflexion just really means that it goes beyond the movement of the normal joint, beyond the normal joint movement. So hyperextension is the movement that continued beyond the normal standing position. So you see the picture there on the right. The red line marks where his joint is. That should be a straight line. So that's a hyperextension of that line. Some people have it, some people can do it. It's not that big a deal. It has a little bit to do with flexibility. Also has to do with joint rigidity, and also if someone's younger, when they're a little more pliable. You guys understand that as we age, we get less and less flexible. A young person might be able to do a little bit more. Hyperflexion is a little less common, but if you can picture someone being able to move beyond the normal range, flexing beyond the normal range of the joint. So if you think of your regular quad stretch where we grab the ankle and you're balancing on one leg and you pull your foot towards your butt to stretch your quad. So imagine someone takes their foot, instead of coming and touching the butt, it comes along the side of the leg and goes beyond. There are people who can do it. One of the grade 9s just showed me just the other day. So it's wonderful, but not something you really want to strive to be able to do. Dorsiflexion and plantarflexion, they're very key when you're talking about calf raises and jumping and things like that, but it has to do with your push off and your ankle mobility. So dorsiflexion and plantarflexion are terms to describe movements at the ankle. They refer to the two surfaces of the foot, the dorsum, which is the superior surface or the top, and the plantar surface, which is the sole or the bottom of your foot. Dorsiflexion refers to the flexion at the ankle so that the foot points more superior, so more up. Dorsiflexion in the hand is also can happen, but we don't really talk about it a whole lot. We really focus on dorsiflexion and plantarflexion at the foot. Plantarflexion refers to extension of the ankle so that the foot points inferiorly or down. So if you're thinking of someone doing calf raises, they're going up on their toes, that's your plantarflexion. All right, and if you're doing calf raises and you have you're standing on an elevated surface, so your ankle can go beyond its normal range of motion, go down lower, that would be dorsiflexion into plantarflexion. So inversion and eversion are two movements at the ankle as well. I use the pictures for sprains because it's quite common, and it's also a lot easier to explain. But inversion and eversion are movements which occur at the ankle joint, referring to the rotation of the foot around the long axis. Okay, inversion involves the lateral rotation of the foot, such as the sole is pointing medially or inward. So if you see in the first picture on the left, you see how his sole has started to come up. The ankle rolls that way. Most of our ankle sprains are inversion sprains. Eversion involves the medial rotation of the foot so that the sole is pointing laterally. Okay, so if you remember from the bones yesterday, where the way the fibula and tibia come down, they actually create a more stable inside of the foot. So an eversion sprain is much more rare. Inversion sprains we tend to do all the time. The stereotypical one is the basketball going up for a rebound. You come down, you land on someone's foot, and you roll. Okay, and then a really bad one, third degree, it'll swell up really quite quickly, but it also the portion of the ankle may actually touch the floor, and the bottom of the foot may be pointed straight to the inside. Supination, pronation. You'll often hear these if you are someone who has orthotics or someone who's getting a new pair of running shoes. I talk about it quite often because pronation, you do need some pronation when you run, but a lot of people are overpronators and have flat feet. So what you find is that the arch, which is designed to do shock absorption, isn't doing it properly. So a proper pair of shoes with proper support can offset overpronation or supination, which is something a little bit different. So supination is the long axis of the foot rotates upward, increase in the longitudinal arch of the foot, and it creates a high arch. So every time someone strides, the weight comes down on the outside of the foot and the arch doesn't actually collapse. So all of the force comes up through the leg. If you're a runner or doing something like that, then you're quite often someone who's going to go to a neutral cushioning shoe so that the shoe does a lot more of the cushioning and shock absorption. Pronation, the long axis of the foot bone rotates downwards, decreasing the longitudinal arch. So you picture someone who's got flat feet, and someone who has very flat feet would go into what they call a motion control shoe or get an orthotic where it actually supports the arch and keeps it up. So types of joints, there's the three major categories. There's a number of different types within those categories, but the three major categories you'll be looking at are fibrous. Okay, they're immovable. So if you see the joints of the skull, the bones don't move, but they're joined together. Cartilaginous, so they're semi-movable, often have cartilage in them. Okay, and then synovial, which are freely movable, and synovial fluid often is synovial fluid's almost always in it, and that's almost like a lubricant. So when you're warming up, it increases the amount of synovial fluid, and then you're able to almost like lubricate the joint. Okay. We're going to be doing a joint movement assignment. We've got two of them. Actually, we've got 4 little pieces there to it, and that's what we'll be wrapping up the rest of the class with. You'll be able to work on your own and with the sheet provided that's attached that I'm giving you here today. So you're going to use this web address, and it's listed on your sheet as well. It's got a little anatomy joint section to it. There is more information if you want to cruise around the website, but really that one web page is all you need. So on the sheet attached, I want you to define the 3 types or categories that we just talked about. So we've got fibrous, we've got cartilaginous, and we've got, what was the third one? And we got synovial. See there, I even forgot. So you're just going to define the 3 types of joints. They're right on the sheet, so it shouldn't be terribly hard. Then there's a chart provided on your sheet as well. Okay, it's on the back of it. There are 6 different types of joints that you're going to talk about. So fill in the chart provided with the information on the web page, and the hint there's actually a chart there with some pictures and diagrams that will help. But you're going to transfer that right into your document so that it can go into your fitness portfolio. Okay, and the third, or the last part, and probably the most work you'll have to do, I want you to choose an athletic movement. It can be a jump shot, a baseball swing, a slap shot, whatever you want. And I want you to list any movements that you see or can think of at any joints. Okay, so if you think of the beef technique we talked about last year, shooting the basketball, that's all based around joints pretty much, with the exception of eyes. Okay, so it's bend, eyes, elbow, follow through. Those are all joints being used. Okay, I'd like you to use YouTube a little bit and try and search for videos that look at the form of different activities, different exercises, different movements. Okay, I want you to list any videos that you use, just to kind of back it up so that I can go and look at it as well. Okay, and I want you to list all the joints that move. Okay, so just about every movement, every sports athletic movement, every joint is pretty much being used. Okay, so when we're talking about the basketball jump shot, the movement starts at your feet and continues right up through your body. So every joint is being used. Okay, so you can fill in that information on the sheet right below where it says question 4. You should be able to do that with relative ease, and also enjoy yourself a little bit. Search around, find some videos that, and choose a skill that you're interested in working on yourself. Okay. If you have any questions, I'll be back and forth from the class to the gym like I was yesterday. But hopefully, it's an enjoyable class. Thanks again, and by the way, guys, thanks for all your hard work yesterday. I really appreciated it. It seems to be a good way that we got our course working. Okay. Have a great day.